a rose for you now that in my world needs absolutely no introductions. I've made my opinions of this rose quite clear over the last several years, as many of you have been on my Instagram journey with me. This is the Lady Emma Hamilton. Bred and introduced by David Austin Roses in 2005. It is my favourite David Austin rose. I absolutely adore this lady. It is extraordinarily beautiful. One of the nicest things about this rose is how late it starts flowering. She will never ever really produce a bud much before the end of June, heading into July. These I've picked and brought into the house to show you today because they were getting so damaged by the rain. I picked them about 3 days ago and I've had them here in the conservatory bringing them forward so I could do this rose review for you. Lady Emma Hamilton is a fairly large bush rose. Now, I'm not normally one to go against the David Austin website, but we have to be quite clear on this. The Austin website says this bush reaches 3 feet by 3 feet. In my opinion, this bush is much, much larger than that. And that is a real blessing, a really good plus point, because a rose this good, you want it as big and strong as possible. Mine here reaches something in excess of 5 to 5.5 feet, and it's almost 4 feet across. It is a very large and substantial plant. Full disclosure, it took a while to get going. It was a bit gangly and a bit scrawny for the first of its 2 or 3 years with me. And if I'm honest, in its first and second year, I nearly dug it up and threw it away, which is one of the things why these videos I'm hoping are finding really, really useful, because not all roses will produce this, the finished size blooms with a finished scent straight away. They take a little while to find their feet, having been field grown, grafted, then dug up, kept bare root, and then sometimes potted. There's an awful lot of trauma, an awful lot of movement for a plant. So give them several seasons to get themselves established before you cast judgment. And if you are going to make the axe fall on a particular rose, make sure you sort of check in with someone who may have grown it before. But the Lady Emma Hamilton, for me, is an absolute belter. The foliage is this wonderful dark green with a bronze tinge to it. You can't really pick it up here because the light is fairly bad, but believe you me, the growth tips have got this wonderful bronzed red edging to them. So that with the very, very dark apricot. David Austin would describe this as a tangerine, which I'm not entirely sure I agree with again, but it's more of a burnt russety orange for me. Very, very much similar in colour to the Lady of Shalott, but in my opinion, this rose completely outperforms her. Starting flowering at the very beginning of July, this rose will still be in flower right through to the very end of November, producing wave after wave of flowers. These are singles, which is very common for the rose at the very beginning of the season. They will send up fairly long, straight stems with very few thorns on them, which are suitable for cutting, and the blooms born individually. As it finds its stride through the season, these will be replaced by very large canes or leaders with maybe 10, 15 or 20 flowers to a head. The flower is very, very deeply cupped, as you can see, this lovely bowl shape, larger outer petals and smaller petals within, creating this really, really lovely, dense feeling. There's a little tiny yellow eye right in the centre there with the stamens, which is really very pretty. But for me, it's the combination between this lovely burnt orange flower and the dark leaves with that red tinging to the outside edges, which bring the whole bush together, combined with this amazing fragrance. The fragrance on this one is, in my opinion, again, we are all different, so full disclosure, everybody in the world's noses picks up on different tones and different accents, but this one, for me, it's rich and it's deep and it's fruity. There's a hybrid tea sense there. There's a little bit of Old English fragrance, and there's a little bit of linen and soap for me as well. Now that sounds something you might not want in a rose, but brought together, it's really fresh, it's fruity, it's very clean on the palate. And for me, it is an absolute beauty. But this is Lady Emma Hamilton, bred and grown by David Austin Roses. I love this rose so much that I have 2. If I had any more room, I would have them everywhere because they are absolutely cracking. That, let's say, that lovely combination between flower colour, leaf colour and the fragrance, bringing all together in a bush that's reaching in excess of 5 to 5.5 feet, flowering late on in the season all the way through to the back end of the year. For me, makes it an absolute winner.